All right. So it is Tuesday, May 2nd, and we are now in the home stretch for sure. We've got, including tonight, there are 3 online meetings that are left. So we meet tonight, the 2nd, we meet next Tuesday, the 9th, and then we have our final meetup on Tuesday, the 16th, and that'll be it. And so if I was to come over to the syllabus here, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. We are now down all the way to the bottom here. Excuse me. And so this is what we'll be talking about tonight. We'll be talking about Lab 867, and that's going to play a critical role in the project, the final course project, which is Lab 869, and it's constructing a Python script to manage WebEx teams. And in fact, it's more than one script, or you could make it more than one script if you were to break things down. So we're going to walk through that so that everybody is 100% comfortable with what we're going to be doing with WebEx Teams. And then there are 2 packet tracer activities. Now, the packet tracer activities are kind of low-hanging fruit because the instructions are really they kind of walk you through exactly what it is you need to know in terms of each of the steps in order to max out the score on the packet tracer activities. And these are the last 2 packet tracer activities of the course, as you can see. So that's what we're going to be working on this week, 2 packet tracers, and then the WebEx Teams activity, the lab. And then next week, what we'll be talking about is you'll have a discussion topic, and then we go into your project activity 869. And so that'll be the activities that you'll be working on, not this week, but the following week, that'll end up being due on the 15th of May. And Dwayne, you've got your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I did. It was about one of the packet tracers, but I guess I was jumping ahead a little bit. But I can wait till we get started with those.
Which one?
I did 8.8.2 today, and when I went in there, it was already like everything was already done, like 100%. And the only thing that it really had me do that I could even document was just getting the release info for each device and putting it into a notepad. And so that was what I submitted for it, because I didn't see anything else in the instructions that we had to submit. I went through, did all the steps like it said, but I didn't really see anything to save.
All right, let's let me open this up to make sure that what got uploaded for the course was not complete here. Let's make sure. I'll get packet tracer. Let me open it up in packet tracer, and let's see if it opens with 100% complete. And if it does,
I think it said it was like 1 of 1, and when I did the check results, it was like already done.
Oh, okay, right. Because, yeah. So the reason is that they so wait, you're saying that all of.
So the only thing they had me do was right there, step 2. Go back up a little bit. Step 2 was go in to switch 3, do the show version, include release with the pipe.
Correct.
Save it as a software version text, and then go in. Then 3B was to go into all the other devices and do the same thing. SH into them. But
correct.
that was the only thing that I found that we could save and upload.
And that's correct for 882. That's correct.
Okay.
Everything else, they basically have you make some edits and put some information in. But other than that, The only thing you're turning in is the Word doc. So that's correct.
I just wanted to check because like I said, I couldn't really tell, uh, anything else that I couldn't figure really anything else to
Yeah,
submit.
that's actually it. Yeah, whatever they ask you to document, that's the only thing you need to document.
Okay,
So,
great.
and again, 883 is very similar, where it'll be a very limited scope in terms of what it is you actually have to do. And again, they're kind of simple activities that you just really follow along and do exactly what they're telling you to do, if that makes sense. You good to go?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
I submitted mine, and like I said, I went through all the steps, and when I was done, and yeah, that was kind of it. So yeah,
Okay.
all right,
Excellent.
thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. Good question. Good question. All right. So, what we've got this week are these three activities, the lab and the two packet tracers. Again, next week, you've got a discussion. You've got the big project activity that you'll start working on next week that'll be due. And that'll be one of the things we'll be looking at, that final Zoom session tag up. And then you got the Module 8 chapter exam. Now, remember that I'm not sure I've got that window open here. Remember that the practice exams are also open right now. So let me pull those up as a reminder, because it's not too early to start thinking about possibly taking um, those practice exams. And again, you get multiple attempts. It's great practice. And so let's come down here and take a look. So the final assessment, uh, you don't need to worry about that. That's the programming project we're doing. So here's the practice final exam, and you can see this is activated. It's open. And then there's a certification practice exam, which is also open. So I would highly recommend that you attempt each of those at least at a minimum one time prior to the actual course final exam, which will be on that last week. So, any questions on what we're going to be working on this week? And this week, it's all about WebEx Teams. And so, some of you will be happy to note that you will not need the CSR 1KV to do anything for the rest of the course. So, everything we do this week is going to be the Dev ASC virtual machine and Python and WebEx, or I should say WebEx Teams. And WebEx Teams. That's it. So you don't need the CSR 1KV. So again, good news there. We're back to a single virtual machine for all the activities that we're going to be doing. And Anj, you'll be happy to note that you can actually complete all of these activities. You don't even need the the Dev ASC virtual machine, right? I recommend that that's what you use, but you don't need it in order to complete the activities. I can see that some people are happy about that. So that's a good thing. All right. And
Right,
so,
so I've tried to look at the next assignment for this week, the WebEx team. So when I was looking through it, I saw that there was some file that was already in the dev lab that I have to modify.
so you're talking about lab 867?
Yes.
Yeah, so let's take a look at that. So we're going to be diving into that. So if in the Dev ASC virtual machine, and you're saying on the Dev ASC virtual machines where you saw that?
No, because I can't access the virtual machine, but I saw it. I was trying to do it early, but I didn't have like those files to modify.
Right. So you can actually, if you follow along in the lab, you can recreate those files
Okay.
like I did here, right? So if we take a look at the authentication one here, so you would just have to create these files here, but you don't need the Dev ASC virtual machine in order to recreate these files or to do any of the tasks that you're going to see me doing tonight. If that does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay.
I have an
Yeah.
idea of how to do it.
Yep. So you'll be able to do those without the Dev ASC virtual machine. Okay. So any questions on what we're working on this week, what we're working on the next or the following week, and then we've got our final exam and the hands-on skills assessment that will be due. Those are both due. And remember, this project activity right here, that is not the hands-on skills assessment. So let me clarify. There's a project activity, but then you have this hands-on skills assessment. And remember, and let me go ahead and pull this up real quick here. This is also going to require, and you know a lot of this already. So you can see here, you're going to have to fill in the blanks for some of these questions. Then it's going to have you take a look at some MapQuest info, answer some questions based on that. And you can see that you're going to code a WebEx Teams bot, right? So you got a bunch of questions you're going to answer. And then you've got a WebEx Teams bot that you're going to program up. And it's going to show you, and then you're going to use some International Space Station API stuff. And we'll talk about that next week. And make sure that you take a look at this and run this, right? Or run your program. And you can see right here, the student will import libraries for requests, JSON, and time. So you guys know how to import libraries. Then you're going to complete the if statement below, right? And you can see they actually give you a lot of the code, and then you're going to need to update it, right? And this is the toughest homework to grade for me, and the reason is because you put your access token in here because you're creating your project, and then when I go to run these programs, I have to edit every single program and put my access token in there when I go to grade it. So this one's a pretty tough one to grade. But as you can see here, they give you the code, and they're going to tell you whether or not you're editing things or not, right? And they're going to tell you exactly what it is you need to fix or the code that you need to provide. And so this is the final hands-on skills assessment. And you might be wondering, well, wait a second, do I need to create that from scratch? Well, keep in mind that they're going to get, we have the Dev ASC program right here, right? That you can copy and paste this onto your Dev ASC virtual machine if you wanted to, or you could put it on, your home machine or whatever. But it tells you specifically what the student will do, right? And so that is the final project, that final hands-on skills assessment, I should say. So just to make sure to clarify that is different from 869, right? It's very different from 869. This is something that you'll be doing on your own. And again, if you guys collaborate, that's okay, as long as your work is your own work and you're not copying and pasting. And I have had this happen, by the way. As long as you're not copying and pasting another student's code, like I think it was 2 or 3 semesters ago, I had a student who was definitely struggling and not turning in a lot of the Python stuff, and actually copied and pasted, I guess got another student to send him their code, copy and pasted their code into a file, and forgot to look at the comments that got entered in. And the student's code that he had copied, he had put his name in the comments. And so that was a tough one to explain, right? So how is it that your code line by line is identical to this other student's, and you even have the comment with their name in the comment, right? So that unfortunately turned out to be an automatic F for the student that copied the code. So yeah, make sure that all of your work is your own, right? Pro tip. Okay. So any questions, again, any questions on what we've got left here? And again, we're 3 weeks to go. That's it.
I have a question.
Yes.
So when we're doing the module 8 reading,
Yes.
should we be reading? Because I'm going through every part of module 8 in the readings, and a few of the, I guess, a few of them get a little like it just was a little hard for me to understand, and I wasn't sure if I needed to like bog my brain down with all of that information or focus on the parts that we're actually like working on, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it makes absolute sense. So, yeah, as I said at the very beginning of the course, right? So, module 8 is by and far the most difficult module simply based on the volume of material and the level of difficulty of that material in the course. So, my recommendation would be to definitely focus your efforts on the material that we are dealing with, which is the WebEx teams, the Python piece, the scripting, and then to go back and assess the other material before at some point prior to the module 8 chapter exam, which again, remember, you get 10 attempts and definitely your final exam. So, and just kind of prioritize that your approach that way. And that would be my recommendation because, and that's another reason that, I mean, how many weeks we're in this for 2.5 weeks, we're kind of in module 8. And that's the reason why, again, it's just a ton of material.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of like understood some of it. I feel like sometimes it kind of just went off in a direction. I'm like, whoa, you went a little ahead of me there. So I just wanted to see, like, I kind of was feeling a little overwhelmed. I wasn't sure, how much we should focus on some of the information, especially before we get to the WebEx team information. Like, I guess it's like 2 chapters within the module 8 that kind of, I didn't know how much we were going to focus on that.
Yeah, no, the focus is really on, and the reason being, the focus is really on the managing the WebEx teams with Python because that's what the project activity is based on. And that's what the hands-on skills assessment is based on. So it's all of that Python and WebEx teams info that we spend our time on. Because for me to sit and talk about, you know, I mean, pick Cisco Finesse, Administrative XML, Cisco Unified Communications Manager, right? So kind of in UCS Manager, all of these things that really aren't going to be what we're going to be focused on and what you're going to have to produce work for would almost be, I don't want to say it's a waste of time, but it would be a misallocation of
Okay.
your time for me to sit here and be like, all right, we're going to spend an hour on UCS and talk about what UCS can do. And then you guys are like, well, wait a minute. We've got this WebEx thing with Python. The project activity is tied into the WebEx thing with Python. And then the hands-on final is the WebEx thing with Python. So, yeah, I mean, definitely focus on all of the activities that work. The WebEx is the big thing because WebEx
Okay.
plays a
Thank
part
you.
in everything from here on out.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no, great question. Great question. All right. Delon, I wanted to get an update from you on whether or not you were able to sort out that RPC error, which I did research and I cannot pin down why you're getting that.
Sir, I'm sorry to disappoint. I was not able to re-download my router image.
Okay.
I will have time to do that this weekend, and I will be providing an update next Tuesday. Promise.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. Yeah, I was just curious if you had a chance, but I did look into it and I cannot find um anything specific to what you were experiencing. Now I can't reproduce it either. So I'm not sure. Again, yeah, still just not sure on why that was like why it was behaving that way. So, all right, good to know. Good to know. So here's what we're going to do first. We're going to talk about Lab 867. Now, at the very beginning of the course, you may or may not remember that you were asked to create an account on developer.webex.com, this site right here. And so we're going to take our time. We're going to walk through each of the things that are going to be important to us. First and foremost, we're going to go to the documentation, right? And we kind of touched on this very briefly a number of weeks ago. So it's a good review here. So when you click on the documentation link, you're going to scroll down, and we're interested in what's going to be under APIs, right? That's what we're all about here, the APIs. Now, definitely know what webhooks are. And this is not only for the course and the course exam, but if you're taking the certification exam, you're definitely going to want to know what webhooks are. So we're going to take a look at access the API. So when I click on that link, again, documentation, scroll down to where it says APIs, and then access the API. And when you do that, you're going to see this little field right here called your personal access token. Now, I know that when I commented on this earlier, and again, a few weeks ago, you can see this limited duration personal access token is hidden for your security. Now, you're going to see it when I paste it into the script, and there's no way that you would be able to glance at it and remember what it is. But the key here is that it's limited duration. And what that means, and let me ask you guys, anybody remember how long this token is good for before you need to come back in here and get another token? Anybody remember?
Was it 30 days?
Oh my goodness, I wish it was 30 days. Let me tell you that. I wish it was 30 days. Do you see that right there? Let's see, somebody dumped in the chat. Yeah, Christy's correct. 12 hours. That is it. 12 hours, which I think is like such a quick turnaround time for the token, but it is what it is, right? So if you work on something tonight, tomorrow night, you're going to have to come back in here and get another token. And let me show you why. So let's cruise over to, where are we at here? Let's cruise over to the Dev ASC virtual machine, right? And this is going to be one of the first scripts that we take a look at here. And I'm going to walk you through line by line, excuse me, exactly what you need here. But what if I was to try to run this, right? So let me say Python 3, and then P3 dash authentication.py. And I'm not sure, I'm looking at this, and I'm not sure, I guess this is just, I'm testing. I don't know why I named it authentication.py. Okay, anyway, I can't remember why I named it that, but you'll notice when I go to run the script, we get this nice error message here that says the request requires a valid access token set in the authorization request header. And the reason that I'm getting this error is because the last time I modified any of these files was back in March, would have been March 10th. Probably when I was doing some of the video recording, in fact. So that's definitely been longer than 12 hours, and the token has expired, right? So that's, if you see that message, it should trigger in your mind that, hey, I need to go back to developer.webex.com and I need to get my new bearer token. All right, so let me go ahead, let's VI this file here. I'm going to come right back over here. And the good news is they've got this little icon right here. So you can just hover over that and click. And you can see when you click on it, it actually gives you this personal access token is allowing you to test the API for 12 hours. So I'm going to click OK. And again, every time you click that, it's going to say that, right? It's going to let you know so that you know it's good for 12 hours. Let's come over here and let me go ahead and page down here to the access token variable. Now, oops, look out. Cursor's flying all over the place. So what kind of variable is this? What data type is this in Python? The access token. What do you think? So I'm throwing some Python questions in here now. Anybody have any ideas? And there we go. So there's my new access token. So a little Python review. So we're going to import the request module, right? And that's going to allow me to make my RESTful API requests. And then I'm going to import JSON, right? The JSON module. Yep, Christy, excellent. It's a string. So the access token is a string. And it's a string because it's inside of the double quotes. Could I use single quotes? Absolutely, right? You could use single quotes or double quotes. But the key is that this is a string. And the same is true of the next variable, which is the WebEx URI, right? Now, this is the path, the URI, the Uniform Resource Indicator, all the way down to the API that we're trying to access, which is webexapis.com, v1, people, me. So let's go back over here to our documentation, right? So we've got our token, right? I've got my bearer token. I'm good for the next 12 hours. And then here we come back to the APIs under documentation. You scroll down to the APIs area, access the API, gets my API token. And then if I come down here under WebEx APIs, you can see that we have all these little plus signs next to these categories: admin, calling, contact center. When the plus sign is there, that means that there are additional categories, right? Or you see it kind of, it's like a radio button, or I should say it's like a waterfall button that's going to give you all of these different things under admin, like overview, admin APIs, authentication. So you could take a look at things like that. Now, when we come down you could even come and look at the full API reference, right? But we're interested right now in, should be people. And give me a second here. Was it meetings? I swear I thought it said people here. Yeah, oh, there we go. Sorry, I was hidden. So yeah, so under messaging, or I'm sorry, under reference, if I clicked on the little plus sign under reference, you can see it gives us all kinds of different categories here, like rooms, teams, people. So let's click on people. Now, this should look really familiar to you because the MapQuest API documentation looked very, very much like this, where it would give us a list of the GET requests that we could use, or the POST requests, or the delete requests, and what all of these things would look like. And so the first one we're interested in here is going to be this one right down here, get my own details. And so here is the URI, right? webexapis.com version1/people/me. So I can click on that, right? And it's going to bring me here. So the nice thing about the WebEx for developers documentation is you can see it has my personal access tokens already in here. So if I wanted to try it, right, I can click on run. And again, it knows it's me because I'm logged in. So it puts my access bearer token in here already. So it kind of stages it. And then we can just roll down here. We can see the response code, right? 200 OK. And then we see the information that we're going to get back. And so what does it tell you about me, right? So it gives me my ID. It gives the email that I'm using to register, right, which is my personal email. No phone number has been entered in. I've got a display name, a nickname, a username, avatar, path to my avatar, my organizational ID, when my account was created. So it was created all the way back in 2017. So this was created in June 25th. And I remember when I created this because I was actually part of the instructor group who was vetting the course. And so I was going through the course, trying to find mistakes or things like that when they had created it. And it wasn't even called DevNet at the time. At the time, it was called Emerging Technology Workshop, ETW. And so again, 6 years ago was when I created this WebEx team account. And you can see when it was last modified, and I can't remember what I changed. Maybe it was the display name or something. But I changed something in here back in July of 22. And last activity was tonight, right? So it shows you when I logged in. Status, right? It gives me the status of the individual, tells me that I'm active, and what type of account is it? It's a person. Yeah, no, Delon, I know. Not only is it crazy that 2017 was 6 years ago, it's insane that it's already May this year. So that's even, and the Kentucky Derby is on Saturday, which it seems like it was just yesterday that the Kentucky Derby was held. All right, so back to our request, or I should say our response, right? So now if I click on request, you can see that it gives you the URI, right? So I've got the URI, and then what I would need to do is construct some kind of automated script, right, to do this. Now, it tells you the query, so you could provide a query parameter. You can see here calling data, and the default is false. So it says include WebEx calling user details in the response. So the default is false. And so here's the single parameter that I could provide. So let me say true. So I'm going to change it from false to true. Let's see if it shows anything different here. And I don't think I have any calling information set up. Yeah, no, because I don't have any phone numbers. So no, yeah, I don't have any caller information. So we don't see anything different. But this is how, if you wanted to pass in a query parameter in your Python script, which we've done before, this is where we would do that, right? This is how you could do it. And then here, again, the response properties, right? So it's going to tell you all of the things that it's giving you back that you're going to see in the response, right? All right. So, or that you could see in the response. All right. So this is a great start for us to come back over to our DevASC virtual machine. And so we put in the URI for the RESTful API that WebEx Teams provides us. And this is it right here. So here we go, my headers, right? So I'm going to have to pass in some header information. And that information gets passed in as a dictionary, right? A Python dictionary with a key value pair. And when we look at this, the key is authorization. And as you might have guessed, we're going to be providing a bearer token. Now, remember, The open brace, close brace here is like a placeholder, right? It's like it represents some value. And so we're using the format method of the string class. Because remember, this is enclosed in double quotes. That is a string. So I can use the dot format method of the string class to say, okay, open brace, close brace. So like hold that space for me because I'm going to give you some value. And the value is what we have right here, right? Inside the parentheses, our argument to the format method, which is the access token. So what are we sending in? Our HTTP headers, or I should say, what value am I sending in along with the API request? I'm sending my access token value as the authorization bearer token. And that's what's going to authorize, get me, authenticate me for this request. And the WebEx Teams API is going to say, awesome, and I'm going to give you the information back. Now, here's what we do. We create this variable here called HTTP response. And here's where we use our requests, right? The requests library that we imported up here, right? Requests for humans. So I say requests.get. So it's an HTTP GET request. And what am I doing? I'm saying from the WebEx URI, which is the variable 2 lines above, the HTTPS webexapi.com version 1 people me. So from that URI, I'm going to send in my header information, right? So, and headers, and maybe it might be better, headers is the variable name, right? That, or I should say, this is the keyword headers that we're sending in our request. And then the headers that we're sending in are represented by the variable name headers. So this could look a little confusing. So let me do this here. So if I was to say, whoops, let's go back to the beginning of the line here. So if I said something like, request headers, and maybe that, and usually you see headers, but for this example, it does make it a little bit more confusing. So I'll say request headers, and we'll get rid of the lowercase h. So there we go. So it makes it a little easier to read. So again, the keyword headers, we're saying that we're sending in the value here for the variable request headers, which is our authorization bearer token, right? And that's all we're doing is we're sending our bearer token in there. And then what are we going to print out? Well, we capture the response in the variable HTTP response. And so now we use this JSON.dumps. And again, what it's going to do is it's going to produce for us a string, right? Or it's going to work on a string and produce a Python object, right? And so HTTP response.json, and that's what we're doing here is we're saying, okay, whatever we got back, give that to me in JSON format, because again, JSON.dumps is going to go ahead and convert that, and it's going to create a Python string that represents the response. And then all we do with the indent equal 4 is we make it pretty, right? So you hear it referred to a lot as pretty print, right? So we're just going to make it look nice. And that is all that we're doing here, right? We're getting my information. So let's see what that looks like. Let's go ahead and run this. And actually, before we run this, let me go ahead and ask any questions on anything you see in the script here, or how to get to developer.webex.com, how you get your bearer token, where the documentation is so that we can come down and take a look at this API. Everybody feel pretty comfortable so far? And again, I like how they do this activity because it kind of like eases us into things.
Yeah, I can understand what is going on. Um, but I was also looking at it. I was trying to do it at the same time you're doing it, and I feel like the names are different.
The
Like
names.
yeah, like in the original, there's headers, but here it's request header.
Right, right. So I changed these names.
All
I
right,
just changed that name right there.
okay. So does it have to be like this, or it can just be like the old one?
No, so it can be like the old one. The reason that I changed the name here is to make it a little easier to understand this part right here, because before this just said headers equals headers. And usually that causes confusion because learners will ask, okay, well, is this the variable headers here? Or why is it headers equals headers? And so it causes confusion because they don't understand that this is just a keyword that's going to identify in the HTTP GET request what the header values actually are. So I just changed the variable name from headers to request headers. And then I have to change it down here because that's what we're passing in as the headers. So you could leave it the way it was, right? But this would have to be like, so up here, this would have to stay headers. And then it would be headers equal headers. I just changed it to make it a little easier to see that, the right-hand side of this equal sign, that is our variable name that we created up here. Does that make
Okay.
sense, Anj?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right. So let's go ahead and run this, and we're going to say Python 3, and now we are not going to get the error with the token expired because that token is brand new. And you can see that the information that we're getting here is, if I go back over to the website, and you see that we kind of ran. So this is a great way to check to make sure that you're getting the right information, right? That things are doing what you would anticipate that they're going to do. And most importantly, this sets us up to now build on this activity in 867. Because now that you've got your bearer token working and you're able to run a GET request to this WebEx Teams API, you should be able to simply kind of add on or copy the file and start creating more requests with respect to what they're asking you to take a look at. So here's what we're going to do now. So this is me, right? I just said, get information on me. So part 4 in this lab, or I should say, I think it's part 4. Yeah, part 4 in the lab is asking you to manage people in WebEx Teams, right? So now they want you to manage people. So let's come back over to our dev ASC virtual machine here. And again, if I run this again, it's going to work every time I run it, right? Well, for the next 12 hours, this is going to work. So this works great. Now, let me clear the screen. What you could do, right, is once you have the first script working, and this would almost be, sorry, I'm just adjusting here in my chair. This would almost be my recommendation is once that first script is working, right, why not go ahead and say, copy the script that you did in part 3. And again, I can't remember why I named it authentication.py, and copy it to, okay, hey, so now I'm going to do part 4, was it step 2, whoops, that typed a whole bunch of stuff, .py. So if you copy that over, your bearer token, and this is the reason why you would want to do this, is the bearer token is already in the next script, right? So now you don't have to go back to the developer.webex.com and go back to the documentation and copy the bearer token and then paste the bearer token in. It's already in there, right? So if I said cat P4-S2 like that, there it is, right? So now all I need to do is go in here and make the changes that would be required in order to achieve the next objective, right? And so what is the next objective? Well, let's go ahead, let's clear the screen. And as you'll see here, and I guess I can ditch that thing there, P4-S22222. There we go. All right. So list people, right? And you can see part 4, list people. So this will be working with people. But before we do that, let's come back over to the API, right? So you can see we're still under the people reference here. So here's an HTTP GET request to list people. So how is that going to work? Well, let's click on that. You can see you can list the people in your organization. It's going to give you some great information here about what this does, how you use it. And you can see right here, we've got all these different type of query parameters that we can provide. So we could provide an email address as a query parameter, the display name as a query parameter, the ID as a query parameter. So again, the idea being is you can query on people based off a lot of different parameters, right? So let's do the following. Again, if you roll down here, you can see if I click on run, you can see what it shows right here, right? And what does it say? It says 400, right? That should be it's red, right? That should be your first clue that, hey, something didn't do what it was supposed to do here. And we get this 400 bad request, right? You've seen that, I'm sure, before on a web page at some point. And why is that? Email, display name, role, or ID list should be specified, right? So we've got to specify, we're not just doing it I'm not looking at me, right? I'm telling the API, hey, I'm sending this request in and I'm trying to get information on this person. Well, if that's the case, then I better provide the person's email or their display name or their ID, or I think, what was it, role? Yeah, or role, right? So it's got to be email or the display name or the role or the ID list should be specified, right? So for this, we have to provide a query parameter. Okay, well, let me keep it simple. I'll just say Travis P. Bonfili@gmail.com. And let's rerun this and see what happens. All right, so good news, right? HTTP response code of 200. So we know that it worked, it's great, right? So not found IDs, there were no not found IDs. And it's a little bit different of the JSON response that we get here, right? So if we take a look at this, you can see, and actually, there we go, wouldn't unhighlight for me for a second there. So you can see that the information we get back is almost identical. Well, it's very close to I'm trying to think of how to say this. I'm kind of tongue-tied. I did the query on myself, so we're getting the same information about me that I did when I did the me. So let's do this. Let me go ahead and drop in another user email. I'm trying to think. So I can't think of anybody's email that I know off the top of my head. So, and I don't want to put your guys' emails in here because then, somebody could abuse that and send you guys spam or whatever. So, but you can see, like, if you know the person's email, right? So now let's try display name. So if we look down here, what's my display name? Well, the display name is Travis P. Bonfili. So let me copy that, come up here to display name, drop that in, and let's see if it's able to work with just the display name. So I'll click run. Uh-oh, we got a problem. Display name lookups cannot be used in the consumer order. Okay, So using the display, I can't do that based on the organization that I'm a part of. Okay, no biggie. So we'll cruise back here. Let's type in Travis P. Bonfili again at gmail.com. Click run. All right, so we could use ID, right? Because every user has a unique ID. So let me go ahead and grab this massive, you can see how long the string is. Obviously, they're anticipating that there are going to be quite a few WebEx API users, or WebEx Teams users, I should say. And let's get rid of the email. And let's put that ID in here, right? So there we go. There's the ID. Whoops. And let's see if we get an error when we try this. All right, we do not, right? So we could query on email address. We could query on ID, right? If you know the person's ID or you know the person's email, you can run that query and get that information. And so again, this is an example of how you can test things here in the developer.webex.com GUI, right? And again, one of the best features is your bearer token is already in there for you. Okay, so that's the GUI. How might I automate this? In other words, how might I write a script in Python to make all this magic happen? So we're going to take a look at P4 list-people. And yep, I got my email address in there. Okay, so now is when you should be able to look at the script and say, okay, well, this looks like pretty repetitive, right? So we're going to import requests in JSON again. We did that in the previous script. I need my WebEx ID, right? My bearer token. Or I'm sorry. Correction. Let me correct that. The WebEx, so I'm using the WebEx ID, or I did use it. It looks like I'm using email. So yeah, I'll show you. Right now it's using email, but I put my WebEx ID in here so that I could demonstrate like, oh, here's how the Python script would look like based on the user's WebEx ID. So I just create a variable for the WebEx ID for that user, right? Whoever that user may be, okay? And that's my ID, or it should be my ID. And then we've got our access token. Well, remember, if you copied the previous script, then your access token's already in here, and you're good for the next 12 hours. The WebEx URI. This changes a little bit, right? Because remember, we're not looking at me, we're looking at people. But again, it's a string. So I throw in this open brace, close brace as a placeholder, and I use the format method. And what is it that I'm using the API to do? Give me information about people. And actually, you can see that I am using the WebEx ID for this one. Okay, so I am using the WebEx ID. Sorry, I thought I was using the parameters, the email parameters, and I'm not. Or actually, parameters go in as well. So this is going to be interesting to see what happens here, because I'm trying to remember, when I created the script, then I do the recording, so I change a bunch of stuff. So we'll see what happens here. But the response is using the headers, and we're trying to pull the information on that person, and the parameters are going to be the email address. And then it does much the same thing, right? We capture that information in a variable called HTTP response, and then we print the information out. We pretty print it so that it looks like a Python dictionary. All right, well, let's run this and see what we get. So let's say Python 3 and P4 list-people.py. Oh, because I didn't copy over the script. I mean, I did as an example, but then here, I need to grab this. Hold on one second. And yes, every single script I run, I'm going to have to do this. So let's grab that information. Let's go into P4 and let's update the access token here. And so this is a case in point. This is what I like to call fortuitous failure. Is I failed to realize that I didn't do this, but this is a great learning moment here. That yeah, it's probably easier. That is not my access token. I think I copied the wrong thing there. Let's see. Oh, you know what? Because because I did the cloverleaf C, and it does not work here when I am remoted in. All right, so let's paste that in here now for the access token. And that definitely looks like an access token. All right, so now let's rerun this. So we'll say Python 3 and P4, list people, and there we go, right? So from this, right, you might take a look at this and say, okay, well, then I should probably be able to parse the information in what looks like a Python dictionary here by using key value pairs to get that information. And you would be 100% correct, right? Because remember, here's our first key is ID with the value, which is the user's team's ID. Then the next key would be emails, but the value for this is a list because you could have more than one email. So it would give you a list of the emails. So I want you to think about the code that we would add to the script I just ran to print out, well, there's only one email here, so we'll keep it simple. So just to print out that email using the emails key, what would we need to do to get that email? And then this is a good place to pause and take a quick bio snack break. So any questions on anything you've seen so far? We now know how to do an HTTP GET request using the WebEx Teams API to get information on me or, your account in WebEx Teams. You now know how to query and get the information on a certain person. And again, the parameter that we need, you could use only the email, you could use only the ID, and it looks like in that script, I dumped a whole bunch of stuff in there. So any questions over anything you've seen so far?
Yes, I have one question.
Sure.
So in the list people PI, it say to where does people ID, I have to use the previous ID there. So is the previous ID what I got from the first time I ran authentication?
Correct. Yeah. So they're going to have you're going to be using your information. So when you say Python 3, and the name of mine is P3 authentication, when I run that, you can see that is my WebEx Teams ID. And so this is the ID that you're going to want to, grab a copy of it and maybe even create a file using VS Code or whatever editor it is you're using. And just grab this and say, and here's what you could do. You could just say copy. And then I don't think I got VS Code running down here, but if I come to my menu and
Yeah, I'm using Nano.
okay. Yeah. So you could just copy that and then paste it into a file so that you could quickly reference it. Or again, you could do what I just did, which is display the file in which, rerun the script, which will produce your ID, which would be this first script here. But typically you would copy it off just to keep it so it's a little easier to get to.
Okay.
But yes, that is the ID that they are going to be asking you to use later on. All right. Did that answer your question, Anj?
Yes.
All right. Excellent. All right. If there's no more questions, we're going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break. So we will come back at, what is it going to be, 8 11 your time. So I will see everybody in 10 minutes. We'll pause the recording. Our recording. All right. So we are
I have a
back
question.
from break. It sounds like there's a question.
Yeah, will you be able to go over the 8.8.3 packet tracer tonight?
Probably not going to have time for that tonight, but there is a video that's out there that covers the entire thing.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah, so you can just watch that offline.
Yeah, the instructions a little confusing. It's talking about using our dev ASC virtual machine with it. And
Correct.
I've not been able to find the download through the virtual machine by going through Chromium.
Yeah. So packet tracer is so there. Yeah. So let me. I can answer that question right now. Let me drop. I thought these were. Hold on. There we go. Okay. Sorry. I lost my mouse there. Okay. So here's Chromium, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're on the desktop, Packet Tracer is already installed.
Right.
Right. So what you would have to do is this is a special version of Packet Tracer. So if I double click here, you can see the version is 740T, and this has not changed in years. And so you're going to have to log in here. So let me do, and hopefully I can remember my password. Didn't cache it from when I think that might be it, but then it may not. Okay, that is it. Got lucky. Okay, so this is a special version of Packet Tracer that's already on the Dev ASC virtual machine. And when you go to File, you would need to download. And I think I downloaded them here. Yeah, so there's 883. So you would download the Packet Tracer activity from within Canvas. So like you would log into Canvas and you can download the activity using Chromium on the Dev ASC virtual machine. Does that make sense?
So we have to go through Canvas.
Yeah, because you need to get it on the virtual machine, right? So what you would do is in Chromium, you could go to my AACC.edu, and then you log in here, you get into Canvas.
I got you, yeah.
And then from within Canvas, and I don't want to have to log in again there. So from within Canvas in the syllabus area, you've got, where are we at here? 883. So there's Packet Tracer 883, and you can see there's the PKA right there. So then you would just download it on the virtual machine, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and that's a great question, Dwayne, because it is a little quirky that that you're not. Oops, I don't want that Packet Tracer. That you're not actually using the version of Packet Tracer that is 8.2.1, which is the latest and greatest, which is what everyone should be running. You're actually using this sort of like pre-canned special version of Packet Tracer that's only on the Dev ASC virtual machine, because you can't download this version of Packet. Like you couldn't go to netacad.com and download this version of Packet Tracer here that we're using. This isn't available. It's only available on the Dev ASC virtual machine.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
All right. Good.
All right, I got it now. So we're not using our regular desktop Packet Tracer. We're going to do it all in
for 883. For 883. That's correct.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep, you got it. And in fact, I think in 883, if I'm not mistaken, I think the instructions even call out. Let me see here real quick. I think recent should show up. No? All right, it's not caching it. All right, so I'll just say open, and then we'll go to Dev ASC downloads, because this is where I downloaded it. It was just the downloads file. But I think in the instructions for this Packet Tracer, and I don't know, you guys are probably seeing the same thing. I think it says in here. Wondering, I thought there was a note in here. Yeah, virtual machine environment, or is there not? I swear I thought there was a note that said that you have to do this in this version of Packet Tracer or in the Dev ASC virtual machine. It says in it, yeah, okay, within the Dev ASC virtual machine, access your course curriculum in the Chromium browser. So yeah, so that's all you need to do is just, use Chromium, log into AACC like you would, and then just download 883, and then you're good to go. Good question. Good question.
Thank you.
All right. So we left off in WebEx Teams. We were looking at people. So we looked at ourselves. And that was the P3 activity. And then we looked at how we could query WebEx Teams for people based on the email address or the ID. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at what we would do to list out the rooms, right? And you can see there's at least the way I name my files here, which I probably should come up with a better naming convention. It's just P5 list rooms, and then P5 get rooms detail, and then P5 create rooms. So we're gonna walk through each of those. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Keep in mind that for all of these, I'm going to need to type in my token. So here is P5 list rooms. And so let's come up to the access token right away, and we'll make the modification here. And so while I'm doing this, let's talk about what you see at the very beginning, right? So we're importing those two modules again, super simple. And in addition to that, we've got our access token right here, which I'm hoping is still in my buffer. And let's drop that in here right there. Oh boy. I think that was the last thing I highlighted. So we're going to have to save this. So here's what happens, right? If now I have to cat out the P3 file so that I can grab this, which is the access token. So after you guys have watched me do this about 100 times, you should definitely never forget that you need to do this. All right, and so then let's do this and let's paste it in. Another plug for, hey, just copy the previous file you created. All right, so now we go to the URI, right? Where is the API for rooms? Well, it's WebEx API, apis.com version 1 rooms. So if we take a quick look over here, right? Here we were with people, right? And you can see we've got attachment actions, events, memberships, messages, people, and then rooms, right? So documentation, go down to the API, look at the reference, and then here are the rooms. So virtual meeting spaces where you can post messages. So here's what we can do. I can list out the rooms, and this is going to be definitely a pretty interesting set of data when you see, because I'm in a whole bunch of rooms from Cisco Live and past Cisco Lives and all kinds of stuff. So we can list the rooms. We can create a room with a post request. We can get the room details, right? Like this can list out. So I can list all the rooms out, but then if I wanted to just get the details about a specific room, right, I could do that. I could get room meeting details. I can update a room with a put request, or I could delete a room with the delete request, right? So we're interested in listing out the rooms. So let's click on that little link right there, which is going to take us over here to the little tryout page, right? So we can try before we buy. Okay. Query parameters. I could put in the team ID. I could put in the type of room. Like, is it a group room? I could put in org pub spaces, which by default is, it doesn't say. So the from, the to, the sort by the max. So let's just go ahead and run this. right? And again, my bearer token is already in there. So take a look here. 200 OK, right? Which means the request worked. Everything did what it was supposed to do. And so we get this JSON object here. And it's got key value pairs. So the first key is items. And then there's the colon. And then you can see the value is a list. And the list is every room that I'm a member of. And this is going to be a pretty long list. So video production, I did this DevNet test thing earlier in the year. You can see I'm in a chat with Anj, Christy, Dylan, Dwayne, right? And it's showing me the room. So that's not your ID, that's the room ID. This is the title of the room, right? Is it locked? When was the last activity? The creator ID. So who created that room, right? When was the room created? And then, let me see. I got Rick Graziani. And let's come down to some Cisco Live stuff down here. Instructor training, CCNA community. Okay, so here we go. So here's these Cisco Live sessions, right? Introduction to SRv6, demystifying DMVPN, branch router security. So these were all rooms that were set up at previous Cisco Live events. You can see 2019, and see how far back we go, all the way to 2018 here. So it just lists out all of the rooms for which I'm a member. Well, you saw that I ran it with no query parameters of any kind. So let's go back and let's take a look at what we put in here. Again, we've got import request, import JSON, the access token, the URI to the rooms API, and then we're going to have to send some header information. Just like all the previous scripts that the Python programs we ran, we need our bearer token. So there it is. And then the content type is application JSON. Now, here is a parameter that I was demoing. You can put a maximum on the number of rooms displayed, right? So let me come down and let's make sure that this is working. So I'm going to pass in, because you saw that we can run it without parameters, right? Which is neat, but it's like, okay, well, what if I wanted to use a parameter? Well, here's what you would do, right? Is I've got my parameter name, which is the key, colon, and then the value. So I'm saying, hey, list it to 2 rooms. And then here it is, HTTP response, a Python variable that's going to capture what gets returned from this HTTP GET request to the WebEx URI for the rooms using the headers and the parameters that I've provided. Remember, the first headers is the keyword that we're passing in with this HTTP GET request to the API server, telling it, hey, here are the HTTP headers. Here's the information I'm giving you for this request, like my bearer token, and that the content type is it's application JSON, right? It's JSON data. And then the parameters. Remember, the first params, that's the keyword, and the second params is the Python variable name. So here it's headers and params, right? And then what do we do? I'm going to print out, and I'm trying to think of why I'm doing that. I think I'm just printing out the JSON data raw, and this is definitely not part of the script, I don't believe, or part of the lab. Or actually, I think it is, and then the pretty print is what I did to clean it up. So we're printing it twice, right? So let's go ahead and run this, and let's see what we get. All right, so if I was to say Python 3 and P5 dash list rooms, and I'll hit enter. Now remember, I limited to this. One of the parameters I passed in said limited to 2 rooms. Yeah, and that's exactly what I did. So in the lab, what's going to happen is it's going to print it up like this, right? Not pretty. And so this gives you an example. If you use this format here with the JSON dumps and the HTTP response.json and the indent equal 4, and you print it out like that, you're going to get this down here, which prints it out, you know, in a much easier to read fashion than what you see above. But again, I went ahead and limited it to 2. So here's something that's interesting, right? The creator ID, right? Who created this room? Well, that's not my ID, right? That's not me. So I'm curious, who created this room? And I mean, I know who did, but let's copy this. And let's go back to I think it was people was P4, was that right? Yeah. So here's how you can find out who created that room. And it's going to be the WebEx ID, and I'll leave my ID in there. But we're going to change this, and I'm going to put this other individual's information in here. And let's do the WebEx ID. Let's see what happens here if I yank out the parameters line. So let me comment the parameters line out, because we saw that with the GUI, I don't need to put the email in there, that it's the ID or the email, right? Or nothing. Oh, I'm sorry, it has to be the ID or the email. Okay, so let's do this. We're going to do that, and let's see what happens, and hopefully this works. So we'll say Python 3, P4, list people. And I've got 2 sets of quotes in there, so that is not going to work. I didn't even see that. Let me go back up here and let's sort that out first. So I'll pull back the quote there, and then let's go to the end of the line, and I will pull it out there. There we go. All right, so now it's a string. So it's a Python string. Okay, so here we go. So let's clear the screen. Let's rerun that. And hopefully this is going to show us what I expect. And it does. All right, so Echo Rantanen is the individual who created, she's a technical consulting engineer. You can see her manager name is there, Lynn Bloomer. And so Echo was the one who created this room. So let's go ahead and go back into the list room. So I'm going to say P5-list rooms. And you notice that I could limit it to 2. Now, what if I comment, and actually I don't even need to comment out the parameters line. That just occurred to me. What we could do is we could come down here and we just get rid of params equals params. So I don't pass in any parameters. So sure, I've got it, you know, it's configured there to set a max of 2, but if I don't pass that in as a parameter, then it's not going to take effect. And then this is going to list out a whole bunch of rooms. And let's go ahead and rerun. And actually, I thought it would be closer in my history, and now I'm realizing it's not. So, oh wait, there it is right there. All right. So now when we run this, you can see that one of the rooms goes all the way back, and this is a OSPF deployment in modern networks. This was a Cisco live session. So what if we want to know who created that session? So who was it that set this up? Well, we can come in here and I can copy the creator ID. I can go back into my list people script, and this will be an interesting one because I do not know who this is. So let's find out. And we'll say change word, and whoops, and let's paste in that individual's information. And that looks good. Okay, so we'll save it. And then we'll say Python 3 and P4-list people. And it was, a Spark bot. So it looks like a Spark bot. So Cisco Live US 2017. and it was a Spark bot that created it. All right, pretty cool. I did not know that that was what we were going to see there. And it used to be called Cisco Spark, by the way. They used to call Teams Spark back in the day, and then they changed it to Teams. I'm sure that there was some focus group that made that happen. So that's how you can list out the rooms that you're in, and that's how you could even see information about who created the room and so forth and so on. All right, so if I can list out the rooms, the next thing I'm going to want to be able to do is I'm going to want to create a room. And I'm wondering why I've got that room detail. Hold on one second. P5-get rooms details. And this, oh, based on the room ID. Okay, so we'll circle back to this one. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create a WebEx Teams room. So let me clear the screen. There we go. And let's go ahead and first get our bearer token. So as you can see, this is, again, one of the great reasons to keep this token, at least when you're working on your scripts, to keep that token somewhere where you can quickly cut and paste. So I'm going to come down here to copy, and then we're going to go into VI P5, and this is create-rooms.py. So first thing I want to do here, oh, and that's one of those rooms I created there, the test 99. All right, so here's the access token, right? And again, if you copied your script, you wouldn't be messing around with everything you see me doing right now, which is trying to get the token in here. And let's back that up. All right, and let's paste it in there. So I'll paste my bearer token in here. And there we go. All right, so again, take a look at this file. It's a lot of repetition here. So import the requests, import JSON, put in my access token. All right, there's a new API, right? So we're going to a new API for rooms. All right, well, let's come over here and see what we can do in the rooms API. And you saw that we were already in the room, so I'm going to create a room. So I'm going to click on create a room. And you can see here, this is where you could test this. Now, I like how they do this here. The body of your request, the body parameters, the title of the room is required. And you'll see that in the script. And so if I was to pull WebEx Teams up and come over here, so here are all of the, the WebEx Teams rooms that I have now. And you can see we've got CTS-233-400 SP23. And you can see here in the spring of, and don't ask me why, for a 130 course, I created a Teams room because I don't think that ever got used. Okay, so the new rooms are going to show up right here, right? So let's go ahead, step back to the GUI, and let's create something called, Tuesday Zoom test, test.0-001. Now, there's all kinds of other information I could put in here, but the only thing that's required is the body. And you can see there's not a whole lot of stuff going on here. And I'm going to make it public. And I'm even going to put a description in here. My first test WebEx Teams room creation. Right? And let's click run and let's see what happens. And again, so convenient that the bearer token is already there for you. So we'll come down here and, spaces belonging to a free org, cannot be made public. Okay, so because my account is it's associated with the free organization. So I'll click run and there we go. All right, so I've got my room. So here's the room ID. And in the lab, you may be asked to, hey, in the previous step, you created a room, get the room ID from that previous step and run it to get the room details. So we've got the title of the room, Tuesday Zoom Test 01. It's a group room. You got the creator ID, right? So that would be my ID. when it was created on, the owner ID, and the description of the room. So I should be able to go to WebEx and take a look at that. Boom. There's the room. So that is how easy it is to create the room. And you can see that I'm the only person in here, right? And really nothing else going on just because it's only me in here, right? But you can add people to the rooms, right? So if I wanted to add one of you to this room, I could. So now let's say that I'm like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. I want to create another room. Well, I could just walk back over here and say, okay, make it test room 002. And I think somewhere along here, I said this is my, we'll say, second test room. And so this is me creating WebEx Teams rooms. Okay, 200 okay. Let's come back to WebEx. Look at that. And then the rooms just show up right here as you create these rooms, right? Okay, so now you know how to create a WebEx room using the GUI. So what do we need over here? Well, the headers. And as you'll notice, this headers variable is almost the same every time. Authorization, your bearer token, right? You're going to provide that information in the HTTP header. And then the content type is application JSON. And then here's our parameter. Remember, this is a required parameter, the title. And then you just put whatever name you want in here. So I think I was calling this test 99. So let me come down here and change the name. Whoops. And we'll just call this test 9999. Where's the cursor? There's the cursor. So we'll just call this test. We'll make it a bunch of nines. All right. So that right there is going to be the name of my WebEx room. And then here's my HTTP post request. So this is a change from the previous scripts that we've run so far, because the post request is going to create the room, right? We're trying to create something. We're not just getting information. We're creating something. And I'm looking at this right here, this JSON, trying to figure out why it says JSON there. I'm wondering if I think I tried to intentionally break it. We're going to find out. And then it's just going to print the information out. Now it's going to print it out like the lab wants you to print it out, which is just, a dumpster fire of text to your screen. And then I've got the code in here so that if you wanted to, you could print it out pretty. But again, I think that is going to give us an error. Let's find out. I think I put that in there to force an error of some kind. So let's go ahead and say Python 3 and p5 create rooms.py. All right, so that did not crash it. I don't remember why. I think maybe I can't remember if the lab wanted you to put that in there. Maybe the lab wanted you to put the JSON keyword in there. All right, so there is our room. Now, if the room has been created, right? If it has been created, I should be able to come over here to my WebEx Teams. Where's my WebEx Teams? Way down here. And there you go. Trav CTS-233. So now you know how to create Teams rooms, right? So let's step back over to the virtual machine. Now, I'm going to go ahead, and this is going to get painful here, right? I'm going to copy the ID of this room. So there's the room ID. So I'm going to grab this really long string here. I'm going to copy it, knowing that I'm going to have to copy something else as well. And we're going to get room details. So p5 get room details.py. And this is what I'm going to change right here. So let's do this. So the room ID, right? So I'm going to put in the ID of the room that we just created for my room ID variable. Now, the other thing that has to change, unfortunately, is this access token. So again, let's come back over here. And let's wipe out the access token. Access token. Holy Toledo. All right, so access token equal. Now, the beauty of this is I have to save that file. I'm going to cat out a previous file that I ran. P3. And, oops, sorry. Finish the name out there. And now I need to get my access token. And hopefully you're learning very quickly that the 12-hour time thing is way too short, because all of your scripts that you're running are going to have to change. Whoops. Didn't want to go down there. All right, and now let's paste in my access token here. All right, there we go. All right, so we've got the new room ID of the room we just created. Oops, sorry, we've got the WebEx URI. Now remember, this is another GET request. So we just put down remember we had the rooms and then the ID of the room and then the meeting info. So that's the API that we're accessing. There's our bearer token saying, hey, here's my access token, the content type, application JSON. We've got the HTTP response that we capture the GET request information from. We pass in our headers, which is the bearer token, and letting the API know that we're using JSON data. And then we're going to print out the details for the room. So let's make that happen. Let's go ahead and run this guy here. Let's clear the screen. We'll say Python 3 and P5 get room details. And there you go. So there's the room ID, the meeting link, right? The HTTPS meeting link, the SIP address, which is for a VoIP thing, the meeting number and the meeting ID, right? So that's how we get details about the room. All right. So let's quick level set here before we wrap things up and take a look at the last two, which are going to be the ones you're going to be very interested in. Any questions on creating the rooms, right? Or how to get the room detail, how to create the room, and how to list out the rooms. It's very straightforward, right? And again, once you get the first Python script created, after that, just keep copying that file and just go through and make the minor adjustments that you need to make. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is part 6. And part 6 is about managing memberships. So we can list the members of a room, right? And that's this P6 up here. Whoops. Actually, we're going to need to go into the file anyway. I have to paste my token in there. Paste in the bearer token. So list memberships, right? So I can list out the memberships of a room based on the room ID, right? So let me come back here. I did not want to do that. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. It's the access token I wanted to change. So let's come to the access token. And let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit. And what are we doing here? And so again, you can see this is just us listing out the memberships for a room based on the room ID. All right. So let's see what we got going on here. I'm not even sure. I'm just going to run this right now. So we'll say Python 3 and P6 list memberships. All right. So for whatever room it was I listed out, I don't see the name of the room in here. But for whatever room it was with that ID, right? These are the people in the room. So it's just me, right? So kind of boring. So let's do this. I'd be curious to know if I say Python 3 P5 list rooms.py. Let's see if anybody's still a member of this room, this OSPF deployment in modern networks. So let me grab this. And we'll say copy. We'll go back into P6- list memberships. And let's change the room ID. And let's make it a different room ID, the one that we just copied. And so 6 years ago, a bunch of people joined that room, and let's see if anybody's left. So let's check it out. We'll say Python 3 P6- Yeah, so a guy named Brian is in there. Oh, yeah, so there's still some people in here. Okay. So, yeah, you can see there are a bunch of people that were in that room. So that's a great way to list out who's in the rooms. Now, the next one is to create membership. So more P6. Let me see what we're doing in this one here. And this is going to be create membership. Yeah, and so this one here is, I'm trying to remember. So the access token is going to have to change. The email is, yeah, okay, parameters. Yeah, so here we go. So if I wanted to bring somebody into a room, to add somebody to a room, this is how I would do it. I would provide the room ID that I want to add these people to, and then I would put in their email addresses, right? So here I just say my email. And for the parameters, that's what I'm going to pass in. I'm going to give the room ID and the person's email that I want to invite into that room. And then as you can see here, we run this post request. And then we print the response out that we get from that post request. So a couple things I need to take care of here real quickly. You guessed it. I need to get my access token. So I'm going to grab my access token here and say copy. And then we're going to say VI P6 create membership. So the first thing we change is the access token. And the cursor's going nuts here. All right, and let's paste that access token in. There we go. So if I run this, it's going to add me to that room. And so let me go ahead and run this and see if that room even exists anymore. P6-create. And I should get, I think I would get an error message here. What did I do? End of line. Okay, hold on one second. So it looks like I did something wrong with the access token. And did it split the line? Oh, it did. Whoops. Okay, so it split the line for some reason. So here's what we need to do. Is need to come up here and do shift. I didn't want to do that. Looks like things are lagging a little bit here. All right, so I'm going to go to the end of that line. Okay, so I think it might be fixed. Let's check now. Yeah, what happened was when I pasted it in, for some reason, it split the line on me there. We don't want the more. There we go. All right, it still thinks that that line. All right, we'll give it one last try here to pull that together. So there I am. And that is definitely the end of the line. There we go. That should have, that should have pulled, okay, so that should have pulled it together. There we go. All right, let's run it again here. Now we might get another error. Yeah, so the user is already a participant in the room. So again, but this is how you would add people to the rooms, and you might want to do that with your teams. Now we get to the very fun and also could be very annoying part, which is our last example here, which is create markdown message. So in other words, how do you send a message to a team's room? And here's how you do that right here. You import request, you import JSON, you need the room ID of the room to which you're sending the message, right? And then you need a variable that has the string value that is your message. And my message just says, hello there. We've got the access token, the WebEx URIs for messages. Again, the headers are the same as they've been for the last 7 or 8 files. Then you got some parameters you need. You need the room ID, right? And you pass that in. And you need the markdown, which is your message, right? The message you're sending in your room. So as part of that project, right? Remember your script does something and then it sends a message into the WebEx Teams room. This is exactly how you do that. So in order for us to do this first, though, in order for us to do this first, I need to go get that access token. And you can see how fun this is when you're grading things, right? Having to grab this access token constantly. So we'll hold on to that. We'll say VIP7, and we'll come back to the room ID. We'll deal with the access token right now. And so we'll pull back the access token here. All right, let's add the access token in. And there we go. Now, remember, the room ID is critical, right? Because you want to make sure that you're sending it into the correct room. And so let me just go ahead and zero this out real quick. And then we're going to go find an appropriate room. And by appropriate room, what I mean is a room in which you guys are in, or just a room that you've created that you're doing testing on. Please do not send this into our main room, right? So let's see. The room IDs. Let me do this real quick over here in the GUI, actually. The GUI is probably going to be the quickest place to get the room IDs. So room, and I want to list rooms. And we're going to run this because I don't need to put a parameter in, I don't believe. Yeah. All right. Okay, so here we go. This is the room ID I want. So that CTS dev test 999999, all that great stuff. So let's get the room ID for that. So we'll copy that, come back over to the virtual machine, and hope that it's got that room ID in here in the buffer, which it should. And we paste it out. Okay, so all I'm going to say is hello there, right? And here's why this can become very annoying very quickly when if someone accidentally does this and they start using our room as opposed to a room that they've created. So I'm going to hit enter. And here you go. And you can see it gives you all the information, right? And the hello there was sent. Everything looks good. So if I come over to the WebEx Teams, and there it is. There's my message. Now, here's where this becomes really annoying, right? Is when the person starts doing this. Up arrow, enter, up arrow, enter, up arrow, enter, up arrow, enter. And what this is doing is it's simply flooding that room with whatever that message is, right? So if we come back over to our WebEx Teams room, yes, hello there, hello there, hello there, hello there. And imagine someone creating a script that, well, actually, I'm not going to show you how to do that. So someone creates a while loop that's an infinite loop that just goes on forever. And that's all it's doing is pumping messages into the room. And it's the same message, right? Very, very annoying. All right. And so one last look here. And again, there are videos out there that I gave you the links to that show you how to create all of this information, all these scripts. And that right there is how you send a message into WebEx Teams. And we ended up perfect timing here. So any questions, right? Remember, this is what you're going to be working into that project is at some point, you're going to want to send a message into the WebEx Teams room that you have for your group. So what?
I have a question.
Yep, go right ahead.
So let's say I wanted to send this message, right? But I wanted to make sure that when someone answer, like it's hard for me to explain. So basically, I'm trying to know if I can use a bot here in this code. Like, can I
Yeah,
create a script
absolutely.
in this code so like if someone answers something, um, it will receive another response?
Yeah, that's a great question, Anj, and you absolutely can, right? So what you could do here is, again, you could make this interactive. So when this runs, you could prompt the user, what is the message that you would like to send into our Teams room? And then whatever it is that they type in, you capture that in this variable called, and again, the variable is, you can make whatever variable you want. Mine is just room message, but you would capture that. In fact, let's do that. Let's do that. Let me give you an example here. So let's do I'm not gonna do this. So yeah, that's what I wanted to do. So hold on. I'm gonna do this copy P7. So I'm gonna make a copy of the file, and I'm gonna call this one P7 prompt for message .py. And so we'll say P7 dash prompt for message.py. So here we are in this file, right? So the room message is hard coded, which, that may or may not be what you want. So here's what we're going to do. Instead of hard coding it, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say that room message is going to get whatever we get input from the user. Please enter the message for our Teams room. Right? And so what I've just done right there is this is going to be prompting the user to type in some message. But again, the variable room message is going to capture whatever the user types in. So instead of having it hard coded, we now have it prompting the user. So let's run this. And Anj, I see it looks like you got booted out, but now you're back. Okay, good. So we've got this line now that's going to prompt the user for some information. So let's make it interactive. So let's run this one. So we'll say Python 3 P7 dash prompt for message. So please enter the message for our Teams room. Hey, this is Travis, and the server just crashed. Whoops. CRASHED. There we go. So I hit enter, and there we go. And so again, it's printing the information out for us because that's what the lab is asking us to do, because it's going to tell you, hey, did this successfully create it? But let's come over to the WebEx Teams room and see, there you go. So you could prompt the user for the information instead of hard coding it.
Okay, so my computer died when you started explaining, but I saw the ending. So can I see the code again, please?
Absolutely, absolutely. So you could prompt the user, and it would look like this, P7 dash prompt. And the only line we changed is that line right there. That is the only line that changed. So instead of hard coding the text in that's going to be put into the WebEx Teams room, now we're prompting the user for what they want to put in.
Okay.
And do you see that right there? That's the only line that changed right there.
Yeah, I understand. That's
Okay,
where you,
excellent. Yeah, no, I mean, there are all kinds of cool things that you can do with these APIs. Again, we're just kind of, we scratch the surface, but like this would be sort of the next iteration of, okay, well, because if it's hard coded, the last thing you want to do is to have to go into the file, change the message, save the file, rerun the script, check in WebEx when you could have the user be prompted for what they want to put in there.
yeah.
Maybe a possible feature for one of your projects, even.
Yes.
Just throwing that out there. All right. What questions? Do you guys have any questions? Do you feel good about this? Does it make more sense? And I would recommend go to the developer.webex.com page and test the things that you're trying to do first to see, well, what is it that I'm going to need? And again, you've seen everything here in the lecture tonight. All right. Well, if there are no questions, let me kill the recording.